Welcome back with a smiley face. A link of previous episodes is provided into the description of the video. You can also join us on Patreon to listen more unlimited audiobooks like this. You can also visit and shop our ebooks. His Revenge to Restitution. Episode 9. Chapter 60 to 67. Liam. I waited long enough. Maddox and Langston brought back plenty of information to help us form an attack strategy. It was time to get all our allies on the same page and prepare to take the fight to Warwick. We had enough time to train leading warriors from all the packs, and they had time to take that training back to their packs to ready their people. This war needed to end so we could all get on with our lives. I called a conference with everyone. Sean, Damien, Austin, Jacob, and Gentry sat around our conference room with the phone speaker in the middle. All of the alphas of the allied packs were dialed in to listen to my plan and the forthcoming steps we would take to enact it. After I was done briefing all the packs as a whole, I planned to have a separate call with a handful of them about some finer details. We should all plan to arrive on Alpha Jet's territory in 7 days, and we will move the next once we can get organized, I instructed. I was not thrilled about assembling on the pack land of the man who tried to kidnap my mate, but he was the closest to Warwick. I looked around the room at my trusted group. Everyone had even expressions on their faces, mentally preparing themselves for what we had to do. "All right," I said. "I appreciate all of your time. I will see you all in 7 days. Jacob jumped up to end the call and work on getting Alpha Langston, Alpha Michael, Alpha Andrus, and Beta Meadow back on the line. "Alpha, are you sure attacking them head-on like this is the answer?" Sean questioned. "I don't mean to be rude, but I still have reservations." "I understand your reservations, Sean, but I don't think waiting is in our interest any longer. We have trained our packs, and now, Warwick knows we are onto him. It's only a matter of time before he pulls the trigger himself," I explained. He nodded his head with a solemn look on his face. Jacob nodded to me to tell me we were ready once again. "Gentlemen," I prompted. Everyone grunted to signify their presence. "Before we discuss anything, are there any questions you have of me? Can we not wait for the blood moon to return?" Alpha Michael asked. "It was effective in your pack's strategy during the first conflict. I don't think we have the time to wait. The next blood moon is almost 2 months away," I said, bracing my weight against the table with my palms. "Too bad we have not seen a harvest moon in, 28 years?" Langston said. "Harvest moon?" I asked. "Alpha Liam, do you not know of the legend of the harvest moon?" Alpha Michael asked me. "I guess I don't," I said. "Would someone like to enlighten me?" Damien sat forward in his chair. "Gentlemen, please stop me if I am wrong. The harvest moon is said to appear in the year of an exceptional child born of the moon goddess." "Yes," said Alpha Michael. "Those wolves are special to our goddess, it is said. They are stronger and have a special purpose, the legends explain. If they live to see another harvest moon, it is rumored that the moon goddess will lend a hand to their destined purpose." I let out a sharp breath. "Unfortunately, gentlemen, we cannot rely on rumored legendary powers or strength gifted to us by our goddess. We simply do not have the time to wait for a new harvest moon." I looked around the room, everyone seemed to understand my reasoning. If we can be a united front, I know we can stop this sire from attacking our race. If we all fight him, there is no way we can lose. We will show our vampire enemy that they will not step on us so easily and expect us to roll over and take it. Warwick is in this for vendetta, but we are here for something far more important. We are fighting for survival and pride. Damien. I left the conference room, headed to Luna's office, where Felix was. I offered to fill him in on the details from our meeting as Luna could not sit in. I had another motive for speaking with Felix anyway. When I got to Luna's office, Felix was sitting right inside the door while she looked over a set of spreadsheets at her desk. "Felix," I said, entering the room. He looked up at me, and I nodded that we should talk outside. We stepped outside, and Felix looked at me expectantly. I quietly pulled Lee's door closed and checked that no one else was in the hall before I spoke. "I need your help," I started. Felix raised an eyebrow. "Alpha wants to move on Warwick in 8 days, I told him. "I am not going to be ready to fight with Cage in that time." "And?" he asked. I could never tell if he was impatient or just liked getting to the point quickly, but he was the only one in the pack I knew had enough knowledge to help. "I have an idea on how I can still be useful in this fight, but I will need your help to pull it off," I said. He nodded his head, telling me to continue. "I can't reliably shift to my wolf to fight. Cage has no idea what is going on. But I can fight on 2 legs. If I had a couple of weapons to help me, then I could hold my own against the vampires and be of use in this fight," I concluded. Felix mulled over my words for a minute. "What did you have in mind?" he asked. He crossed his arms over his chest, now interested in what I had to say. "This is everything we have kept," Sean said, handing the large bin to Felix and me. "They weren't destroyed in the fires, but we hadn't figured out what to do with all of it yet." "Thanks," I told him. "I think I have the perfect use for them." Felix nodded, both of us thinking about the same thing. We headed back to my office with the box. "I may be able to give you a basic knowledge, but there is someone else we can call," Felix said. "Who?" I questioned. "Did you read the dossier on Alpha Michael of Stary Pack?" Felix asked as we stepped inside my messy office. I went over to a table in the corner and started removing papers and folders to have a spot to work. "Yes, he's a combat expert," I said. Felix nodded. "He is more than an expert. Did you read the report on how he came to power of his pack? He is a hand-to-hand specialist with a particular set of skills in this area," Felix further explained. I didn't remember all of the details as I had done a lot of studying on our allies since waking up. Some of the details were bleeding together. "I am not sure we have time to get his help," I said. "You will not know if you do not ask," Felix said. Missy. That was truly one of the best days of my life. I climbed over the center console and snuggled into Maddox's chest. It was reckless and dumb, but I couldn't stand the space between us in the front of the car on the way home. He just laughed, setting his chair back enough to make space for me. He drove with one arm around me and one the steering wheel, letting me contentedly lay against him while giving me occasional kisses atop my head. The entire thing was just bliss after all the stressful things going on. Maddox jostled my dozing form to tell me we had a visitor when we got back. When I looked at the front steps, Liam was sitting on them. I swallowed the lump in my throat. The last time I saw him, I was screaming my head off, blaming him for getting my mate hurt. "Maybe you should go talk to him. I need to take the car back to the pack house anyway," Maddox said softly in my ear. I nodded and turned back to get a kiss from him. He opened the door, and I awkwardly climbed out of it. I slowly headed over to Liam, who had a bemused expression. "Should I talk to your mate about safety in a vehicle?" he joked. "No," I said. I did that. I sat down on the step next to him. Crickets could be heard in the nearby woods. "I thought it was time we talked," he said gently. "I'm sorry," I told him. I was out of line. I grimaced, thinking about the awful things I shouted at him. To my surprise, Liam wrapped his arm around my shoulder. I probably deserved them. I know you were hurting and worried. I laid my head on his shoulder. Even if he did a good job and got them both back here alive, I shouldn't have asked your mate to do that. It's okay. He's back, and we're getting past it, I said, accepting his remorse. You should know that no matter how many times you scream it at me, you're still my pup, he said softly. I sniffled, letting out a small laugh. Keep him out of the fighting, please. I pleaded with him, my voice cracking ever so slightly. I want you both out of it, he agreed. The grass crunched under Maddox's feet as he joined us. Alpha, he greeted Liam. Liam kissed the side of my head, squeezing me to him momentarily. Then he stood, pulling me with him. Keep a good eye on my girl, Liam said, smiling at Maddox. I moved to Maddox's side and his arm wrapped around my waist. Wouldn't dream of anything less, Maddox smiled at me. We watched Liam casually walk away, back toward the pack house. I realized that nothing was ever going to be entirely perfect. There would always be conflicts around us and ones that we may be involved in. There would be good days, though, just like today. With Maddox by my side, I knew we would be able to face it all head-on and come out the other side. Let's go to bed, I said, squeezing Maddox. We climbed the steps to our little house and headed to bed to end our perfect day in each other's arms. Chapter 62. Warwick. I thrummed my fingers on the table in front of me. I didn't expect the wee dog to kill another sire so unceremoniously. It definitely threw a wrench in my plans. I still had Nethercott's kin at my disposal, although now I may require his involvement in my plans since the dog bested Big Rave. The heavy door to my office flew open, banging against the wall hard. Charlotte Big Rave stood in the doorway with a nasty look on her face. I rolled my eyes in anticipation of her fit. Warwick, why are we not retaliating? She demanded to know. All in good time, I droned. No, we need to take care of these flea bags now. My destined was killed, and with him, our whole clan. I only stand before you because Harlan was not my sire, she barked at me. I waved my hand dismissively. Yes, yes, I said. I will move when the time is right. She slammed her fist on the table. You will move now. No more waiting. They found this little hideout of yours. Your soldiers, if they can even be called that, get picked off by the handful everywhere they go. No more games and waiting. Take the fight to the stupid dogs now. She was very insistent in her demands on how I played this game. I guess that was to be expected after losing her destined. I will take it under consideration. I want the one who killed my Harley. He will pay with blood, she promised. My dear, that may be the first helpful thing you have said, I thought aloud, grinning. A plan began to unfold in my head. Lissa. I don't know if the pain of losing Robert will ever fully heal. I'm honestly not even sure I will survive it. After all these years of judging women as weak for succumbing after they lost their mate, I finally understand the depth of the pain they felt. When I woke up in the mornings, I started to wonder if it was worth it or if I should just close my eyes and succumb to the darkness. Grandma. Junior's voice caught my attention, startling me out of my dark thoughts. How could I even think of leaving when I had these little ones to live for? A cacophony of giggling children soon followed Junior's call for me as he held up Isley to me from across the yard. She smiled widely, her little gums poking out as she was proffered to me. I walked over, my chest still tight from thinking of Robert, but I was determined to put that aside for my grandchildren. They shouldn't see me like this. Scooping Isley into my arms, I rubbed my nose to hers and tickled her belly softly as she reached for me and giggled. As I sat down with her, she stopped smiling and laughing as she grabbed my finger. I let her have it, glad she wasn't trying to pull my hair this time. She looked up at me with an almost serious expression, and as I contemplated what she was doing, I felt it. A warmth spread through me from my finger and into my chest, easing the tight feeling and weight I'd been carrying. This wasn't the first time the little girl in my arms seemed to magically soothe my ache. I hadn't told her parents yet, but I suspected Isley was special like her mother and Junior. A loud crash from the back of our yard drew my attention away from Isley, and my heart stopped in my chest as I realized what I was looking at. It was a vampire. There was a vampire within the pack's land, and I was alone with the alpha and beta children. The sound I'd heard was him breaking through my privacy fence, and now he wore a dumb expression, looking frantically around as if to figure out where he was. His eyes quickly settled on me and then scanned around to the kids before his mouth split into a vicious grin. "I've got pups in here," he yelled out, looking over his shoulder towards the hole behind him. "I don't think this is where we're supposed to be, but we might as well kill these ones since we're supposed to kill them all." A second vampire appeared from behind the first, looking and sounding uninterested. He didn't seem to care why they were here, he was just looking to get it over with. "Kids, get behind me," I hissed, my voice low. "There's no point in hiding," the bored one told me. "I won't let you hurt them," I said firmly, frantically trying to figure out how to protect all of the kids. I was a Luna, sure, but it had been a long time since I trained to fight anything. Still, these monsters killed Robert, I wouldn't let them do the same to my little ones. I'm the former Luna of Blood Eclipse. Go now, and I'll spare your lives. Stay, and if I'm not done with you by the time they get here, you'll be torn apart by the patrols." "Luna," the dumb one queried the bored one. "Like the alphas," he replied, now looking at me with more interest. "That means you're the current alpha's mom then," my bluff failed. My relation to Liam made me a higher value target, and if they figured out who the children were, "It means you should worry about your death more than who I am," I growled, my wolf pawing at the edge of my psyche for control. "Take the little ones and run into the house with them. I need you to keep them safe while I handle these two," I linked Junior, trying to keep my voice calm. I didn't think I could fight two vampires by myself and keep them safe simultaneously. "Are they vampires?" he asked in return, touching my hand from behind me. "Yes," I answered simply, there was no use in lying to him. "When I start fighting, I need you to go." His voice changed, stubborn now, "I won't leave you here with them. I won't let them hurt you." Sometimes learning to be a leader is understanding when you have to let others risk danger to help you save others. "Right now, I need you to keep the rest of the children safe while I hold them off until the patrol can get her. Please help me, my little alpha." "Junior." The vampires smelled bad, I could tell why no one liked them. Grandmommy wanted to leave her here, but I couldn't do that. "I won't let them hurt my grandma. Please help me, my little alpha." I looked down and saw Isley laying on the ground, the other kids were behind me. They were in danger too. My chest felt weird, like a balloon swelling when she called me little alpha. Grandma was right, I thought. I had to protect them. That was how I would help her. She couldn't fight if she was worried about us. I picked up Isley, holding her close to me like Dad taught me, and looked to the other kids. "When I say so, run with me." Delilah nodded and looked scared but ready to run. Leo looked like he was going to throw up, Lucas was trying not to cry, and Ashley was pawing at me, trying to get me to play. Not right now, I told her quietly. I told your father they're here, Grandma told me. He's sending the patrols back. Get ready. Grandma started to shift, and she fell onto her paws as she ran towards the vampires. Then, I heard her in my head, go. Run. I yelled as I turned and sprinted towards the house with Ashley. I heard Grandma growling and yelling behind us, but I didn't look. If I stopped, she would get scared. We got to the house, and I pulled open the door hard. It broke the glass and scared me for a second. Grandma would have to be mad later, I thought, running to the living room to put Ashley down in her bassinet. She just laid there and looked around at us. Is your grandma going to be okay? Delilah asked, grabbing my arm. I think so, I answered. I didn't know what else to say. A yelp from outside made us jump. Was Grandma hurt? I don't know how much longer I can hold them off. Try to find something to start a fire. If they get past me, light the vampires on fire. You all won't be fast enough to get away. Grandma gave me instructions over link. She sounded worried. If they got past her, did that mean she was dead? I think Grandma is hurt, and she told me to catch them on fire if they get in here, I told the others. Delilah's eyes got really big. Is she going to die? No, I told her. It felt like there was a fire in my belly and in my chest. My hands were getting tingly, and all I could think was I wouldn't let them hurt my grandma. They already killed Grandpa. I had an idea. Will you stay here? I have to do something, I asked Delilah. Where are you going? She demanded. I have to go help her. Then, I'm coming with you, she said, her lip pouty like when her parents told her no, and she didn't want to listen to them. Fine. Leo and Lucas, you have to stay here with Ashley. Leo, if I yell at all, I want you to take Ashley and run, okay? I told our younger siblings. Leo nodded. He looked scared, but his eyes were determined. He loved our little sister the most and wouldn't let someone hurt her. Grabbing Delilah's hand, I pulled her to the kitchen. Get Grandma's cleaning washcloths from under the sink. I'll be right back. I didn't wait for her to say anything before going to Grandpa's office. It's where he kept the bottles of the stuff he drank when it was our bedtime. I remembered that I could make firebombs with bottles like these from the zombie shows that Mom said I couldn't watch. I bet she'll let me watch them now. I met Delilah in the kitchen, and she had the basket of rags Grandma used to clean. I took her to the garage, where Grandpa kept the lawnmower and the gas for it. There was a big sink in the garage, so I poured out the gross-smelling stuff in Grandpa's bottles. I could hear Grandma still growling outside, and it sounded like she was fighting. I put the bottles on the ground and got the gas can for the lawnmower to pour into them. They said on the show that you had to pour the stuff in these bottles out and put gas in it, or they wouldn't catch on fire good enough. I filled 2 bottles. I showed Delilah how to shove the rags in the bottle and get them wet by holding them upside down for a couple of seconds. I didn't feel so worried anymore, this was going to work. Grandpa had a lighter by the grill, we were ready now. Are you ready? I asked Delilah. She picked up a bottle and handed me the other one, and we walked towards the door that went to the backyard. I opened it quietly to look outside and see what was happening. Delilah stayed close to my back. Grandma was covered in blood, but one of the vampires was on the ground. He wasn't getting up. The other one was showing Grandma his teeth. She whined when he hit her, making the fire inside me burn more. Grandma wasn't getting up. Leave my grandma alone. I yelled. I used the lighter to catch the rag in the bottle on fire, and it burned so fast it scared me. What do you think you're going to do with that? He asked. He turned his mean look towards me instead of Grandma. This! I yelled, throwing the bottle as hard as I could at his face. It missed his face and hit the ground behind him. He laughed at me for missing, but then he looked down and got scared. The bottle blew up when it hit the ground, and Grandma's yard was on fire behind him. He yelled at me. The vampire looked really mad, and he started walking towards me with his teeth out, making growling sounds. Liam! Delilah said, tapping my shoulder and putting the other bottle in my hands. I lit the rag on this one, and he roared at me when I pulled my arm back like I was going to throw a baseball. I couldn't miss this time. If I did, we were all going to die. His head was too small, so I threw it at his tummy instead. This time, I hit him easily. The fire spread all over him, and he screamed. I watched him keep walking towards us, and I started to get scared. He was on fire, but he was still alive. I looked around for something to hit him with, and I saw Grandma's big scissors she used to cut branches and trim the bushes lying against the wall. The blade was as long as my arm. I grabbed them as fast as I could, but the vampire was trying to hurt Delilah. She screamed and ran to me. He followed her, yelling and stinking from burning. I pushed Delilah behind me, grabbed one handle in each hand, and pushed the scissors in front of me into the vampire's chest as hard as I could. It felt gross, but it went in all the way. He fell on his knees and tried to pull the scissors out as he breathed really heavy. I grabbed the handles again and pushed them together as hard as I could. It made a wet squishing sound, and he fell on his front. The scissors stopped him, and he just hung in the air. His head, Grandma almost whispered. You have to take his head. I didn't notice her crawl over to us, but she looked really hurt and covered in blood. She shifted back, but she was still lying on the ground and didn't look like she could get up. How am I going to take off his head? I thought. I looked around and didn't see anything. Can I pull it off? Should I kick it? Am I strong enough? Out of the side of my eye, I saw a blur, and then I heard chop. When I looked over, Delilah was panting and had blood sprayed all over her face. She was holding Grandpa's hatchet he used to chop wood, and it was buried in the ground next to the vampire's head. She looked at me and let go of the axe. Is he dead now? I think so. I answered, trying to figure it out, too. I poked his head with my foot, and he didn't move. A loud crash from the side of the house made us look up, and Austin appeared with a bunch of other warriors. What? Austin asked when he got to us, looking around at us, the fire, and Grandma in surprise. He took his shirt off, put it over Grandma, and started giving orders to the other wolves. It felt like I could breathe for the first time since the vampires appeared in the yard, and I just sat down. I was tired now. Delilah looked tired too as she stared at the burnt vampire. Did I just kill a vampire? I asked myself, trying to make sure I wasn't dreaming. The sound of footsteps came from where the vampires broke through the fence, and we all looked to see a big, mean-looking vampire walk into the yard with 4 other vampires. He looked way scarier than the ones we just fought. My chest got tight, and I looked at Delilah. She was as scared as I was. I had to pretend I wasn't, though. I had to be strong. Go back to the house, Austin told us. He was smiling. I'm here now. We'll take care of this. I jumped up, grabbing Delilah's hand. I felt safe now. Austin would protect us. Chapter 63. Missy, we should definitely go back to the trampoline place again, Soul giggled. That place was so much fun. Agreed, I told her, squeezing Maddox's arm that was comfortably nestled between mine as I leaned against him. Thank you for planning that, I said, looking up at him without moving my head. His cedar and citrus scent filled me with a calm warmth, and I was enjoying his proximity. I just wanted to have a day with you and our friends, he shrugged. I think you already thanked me at dinner, thoroughly, he added by link. I felt my face burning as I tried to keep everyone from seeing me blush, but of course, Emmett scoffed. Ugh, quit linking her to Maddox, he groaned as he launched a throw pillow at Maddox. Maybe you should focus on why you don't have anyone to link dirty things to, Maddox replied simply with a shrug, laying his head on top of mine after deftly avoiding the soft missile aimed at his face. Too bad she doesn't exist, Julie snapped back, her laugh filling the room as Emmett stared at her open-mouthed, unable to come back with anything. I noticed Allie blush and look away from everyone during this, but I wasn't sure what it was about. I didn't think it was a good idea to put the spotlight on her for it, though, so I left it alone. We'd been sitting in our living room just spending time with our friends since we got out of school. It was a nice day out, and I'd left the door open to let the breeze blow through. I was enjoying the cool fresh air against my skin as I cuddled into Maddox's side. My stomach started to growl, and I ignored it, not wanting to ruin the moment. I think someone's hungry, Maddox said in a low voice, leaning down to speak into my ear. His tone and nose nuzzling my earlobe sent pleasurable shivers down my spine. I'm fine, I lied. My stomach was mutinying as if it heard Maddox and wanted to lodge a protest for my neglect of its needs. I'll be back, he told me, pulling his arm from my grasp. I groaned in disapproval at losing his warmth and presence, but he stopped in front of me and pulled his hoodie over his head. I swallowed hard when his shirt lifted to show his recently sculpted stomach, but then it was gone as his shirt returned to its normal place, and he handed me his hoodie. He leaned over to place a soft kiss on my lips and then my forehead. I hope this will do until I get back. Even Soul groaned at that one, but I didn't care. He'd left a soft warmth in my belly, and as I pulled his hoodie over my head, his scent covered me. While you're all complaining about the lack of love in your life, is anyone else hungry? Maddox called out from the kitchen. Everyone confirmed that they were indeed hungry teenagers, and they all graciously accepted his offer of food. Maddox, I swear, she'd ignore that she was hungry for days if I didn't feed her, I lamented, turning on the sink to wash my hands before prepping food for everyone. I felt a familiar chill down my spine as I finished washing my hands. It felt like I was being watched. I looked around and out the window, but no one was around. I pulled out the ingredients to make pizza and began to brown sausage for it. I couldn't get the feeling out of my head, though, and as time went by, I felt more uneasy. Something is wrong, Tom piped up. I could feel him starting to get restless. I know, I just can't tell what. That's when I smelled it. Missy had most of the windows open along with the door, and through the kitchen window, wafted in a scent I didn't think I'd come across again. It smelled like Big Rave, but wrong. I can smell you, I told him, my voice as quiet as I could make it. My mind was spinning, trying to figure out how it was even possible. Even if I didn't like to think about it, there was no doubt that I killed Big Rave outside Warwick's hideout. I could still hear the sounds of laughter and fun in the other room, so he must be outside the kitchen window and upwind of the front door. They don't know yet, and I need to keep him away from Missy. I could feel my heart hammering against the walls of my chest, and I knew this spelled trouble for all of us. For a sire to show up on Packland in broad daylight was bold, even if he did have a grudge against me. Do you think we can get him away from the house? I asked Tom. I don't know, he muttered, pacing. I don't think it's that vampire either. Who could it be? I questioned, as much to Tom as to myself. I found you, a feminine voice called from beyond the window over the counter. The face of an impossibly beautiful woman appeared in the window, smiling as if she'd been given everything she'd ever asked for as she looked at me intently. I believe you're the one who killed my destined. Destined? I asked, not understanding what this woman who smelled like Big Rave wanted. Then it hit me, like. Your mate? Yes, I do think the equivalent for you dogs is called something like that, she spat, her smile now gone. Don't reduce us to your animalistic terminology. Harley was my soul. I was his in return. His Charlotte. We don't all find that person, it is much rarer than your kind mating like rats. You took that from me. Now, I'm here to make you pay for it. Alpha, the mate of the sire I killed is here at our house, and she is talking about revenge. I don't know if she brought other vampires with her. I need help, I linked Liam, hoping he'd be able to send warriors to me immediately. Assume she has more vampires with her. They just attacked my mother, too. I'm trying to get to you, but I need you to take care of this in case I can't. Protect my daughter, Maddox. Yes, sir. I'll protect her if it's the last thing I do. This was it. Help might not be coming, and I had the sire's mate here to kill me. I realized the living room had gone quiet. Maddox. Missy's voice came from the doorway. Is everything okay? Yeah, all good in here. I'll be there in a second, I lied, hoping this woman would ignore Missy. Charlotte's fight was with me. I was about to link Missy and tell her to be ready for a fight when she said the words that would end any hope I had at trying to take this fight somewhere else. Okay, I love you, she yelled, going back to talking. Your mate. Charlotte gasped, her eyebrows raising to the sky as she took in this revelation. Killing you would be too easy now. You need to feel what I feel, and when you beg me for death, then I can decide whether to give it to you or not. Vampire version of a Luna here. Get everyone out. Now. I linked Missy. Charlotte turned to run toward the front of the house, but I launched myself at the window, barely managing to catch her by the hair. The blonde strands felt straw-like in my grasp as my upper body hung out the window, but I yanked roughly to keep her from running. I heard screams from the living room as I pulled Charlotte to me for dear life, twisting my fist in her hair to get a better hold on it. I heard snarling from the other room, and Tom was begging to be let free. Missy was in danger. You didn't think I'd come alone, did you? She asked, her voice strained as I held her tightly to the side of the house. I'm going to make you watch as I drink every last drop from her veins. I tightened my grip further and ground her face into the siding while using the wall for support. I could already hear it groaning and creaking under her. A flash of pain in my hand was followed by her pulling herself out of my grasp. Looking down, I was holding a fistful of now blood-stained golden hair. She'd cut herself free, scratching me in the process, and now she was about to go after Missy. No! I shouted, unwilling to let her get away. Without thinking, I launched myself toward the window. I could have fit through, but I shifted as I jumped. As I grew, the window exploded around me, and my paws hit the ground on the outside. She looked over her shoulder as she reached the front door and laughed as 4 vampires stopped me. I knew they couldn't be sires like Big Rave, but they smelled old. This was going to be a problem. The only thing that mattered was stopping her from hurting Missy. How do I get past them? I desperately wondered to myself. Kill them all. Get to Missy, Tom growled. Let's do it. Missy, okay, I love you. I yelled. Something felt odd. Maddox got really quiet in the kitchen. Typically, I can hear him cooking, but it was like he just stopped. I could faintly smell something, but I couldn't quite put my finger on why it smelled familiar. No one else seemed to notice anything wrong, so I resigned myself to listening to Maddox and trying to figure out what I was smelling. That's when it hit me, I could see myself in that cold dark room, the vampire attacking me. It was then that I knew, they're here. Maddox's voice invaded my thoughts, vampire version of a Luna here. Get everyone out. Now. What do you mean they're here? Emmett asked, looking around the room incredulously. Vampires, was all I could get out before an explosive sound in the kitchen turned our attention in that direction. Everyone was instantly on their feet. As I turned to run to Maddox, she appeared at the door. The vampire looked like she'd been painstakingly carved by a cruel goddess bent on deceiving her prey into thinking this wasn't a monster. Which one of you is the lady of the house? She asked, her voice dripping in derisiveness. No one said anything, but most of the group instinctively turned to look at me. As they did, she smiled, and her eyes locked onto mine. So, it's you that I'll be killing today. We won't let you, Soul squeaked. She was ashen, all the color had left her face in absolute terror. I do not intend to afford you that choice, but I applaud you for the effort, the woman declared, looking Soul up and down in curiosity. Her mate killed my Harley, and now, I'm going to make him watch her die, slowly. You'll all be disposed of as collateral. Let them go, and you can do whatever you want with me. They haven't done anything to you. I pleaded, looking around at my friends. Ah, but they don't have to, she chided. They're all mutts the same as you, and you all need to be scrubbed from the earth. It's what Harley would have wanted, and it is what I will give him. A small wave of her hand sent multiple vampires through the door, and all broke loose. Chapter 64. Maddox. I tore the hand from one of the vampires as they reached out to grab me. They'd been trying to get their arms around me to hug me, but I'd fought hard to keep them from doing it. I knew if one of them got a hold of me, the others would tear me apart, and Missy would be gone. I could hear Charlotte threatening Missy, and I needed to get to her. These vampires were frustrating me, though, because they'd trained to fight as a team. These weren't the same vampires we'd fought the first time when Luna and Missy were kidnapped. They were organized and well-trained. I was stronger, but I was having trouble finishing one while the other three attacked me. I worried what this meant for the rest of the pack, but these were older, the woman handpicked them to come with her to kill me. From what we knew about the rest of the vampire forces, they were mostly young new vampires. I hoped that was true. If it weren't, only our warriors would be able to fight them, and there weren't enough of us in the pack. That's why we asked for help from the other packs. I shifted back to my human form, letting one of the vampires hit my now bare chest. As he tried to pull his hand away to strike me, I grabbed his wrist and pulled him to me as I struck out with a punch of my own. His jaw crunched loudly under the weight of the blow, and the other vampires started to try to attack me as a team again. This time, I used the vampire I'd now captured to absorb their blows. Their rhythm was broken, and I could tell they were having trouble fighting me in human form, just like Big Rave did. I was right, they weren't training to fight us like this. Alpha, they have trouble fighting us unshifted. They expected to fight us like wolves. Thank you, Maddox. Is she safe? She will be. With that, I focused on killing the leeches before me. I'd turned the vampire I captured around to face his comrades and held him by the back of the neck with my right hand while my left controlled his wrist of the same side. As his friends attacked, I used him like a puppet to intercept them. They were getting frustrated, but I didn't have time for a prolonged fight. I could hear chaos inside the house. The one to my right sprang forward, trying to deliver a killing blow with his hand bladed like a knife towards my chest. I stepped back and brought the other vampire into his path at the last moment, and he pierced through my captive's chest easily. The vampire's arm was buried past his elbow in the trunk of our shared victim, so I let him go this time. I jumped forward, shifting midair into my wolf and ripping the vampire's head from his shoulders before shifting back as my feet hit the ground. There were 2 left now. I was outside their range, though, and they couldn't surround me. I bolted for the door. I could hear them right at my heels, so when I reached the front door, I snapped off one of the 4x4 support beams to the small porch. I turned and dropped to my knee, letting the first vampire behind me impale himself on the broken post fully. I stood then, kicking the post and impaling the second vampire who was close behind him. I grabbed the post in the small space between the 2 vampires and pivoted towards the house to pin them to the wall with it. They were screaming in pain and still alive but incapacitated. I had to get to my mate. Charlotte smiled wickedly at me from the back of the room as she held Missy by the throat. "You're just in time to watch, Missy." The other vampires spread out, intent on attacking my friends. Before I could move, Emmett and Sulian blocked the view of us girls. Julie pushed Emmett aside. "I don't need you to save me." "Never said you did," he retorted, annoyed. There were only 3 new vampires, but our friends weren't warriors. I was afraid one of them was going to be killed or bitten. I wasn't sure which was worse. I felt my fur sprouting from my skin and my body getting larger as I shifted behind the fray. The sound of breaking glass caught my attention, and I saw another vampire joining our fight to attack Sol and Allie. I snarled and leapt toward that vampire, wanting to protect my friends who weren't built for fighting. I pushed them out of the way with my body and met the vampire head-on. She tried to jump over me, but I reared up on my back legs and met her in the air. I bit her neck, latching onto her shoulder. I pulled up, shaking her in the air hard before slamming her to the ground, where she escaped my teeth. She was bleeding badly now, but she didn't look like she would stop attacking me. She ran at me with her arms outstretched wide, and I realized she was trying to hug me. I ducked under her arms and bit one of her ankles, jerking my head viciously and ripping her from her feet. I used my grip on her to repeatedly smash her into the ground until I felt her stop resisting. I dropped her and stepped on her back to make sure she couldn't get up and then tore her head from her shoulders to make sure she was dead. This wasn't as hard as I thought it would be, but that felt like a trap. Did she only bring young vampires with her? I wondered as I turned to look at Sol and Allie. Their looks of terror as they looked between the vampire and me made me feel bad. I heard a cry of pain from behind me, and when I looked, I saw Emmett with a wound in his neck that was pouring blood, and the vampire he was fighting had blood all over his mouth. Oh no, Emmett had been bitten, and he looked like he was starting to lose his fight. Sulian wasn't faring much better, and Julie looked like she was holding on by a thread. They looked exhausted. Knowing Emmett was in trouble, I moved to help him. I saw a shadow from the corner of my eye leap toward me, and I jumped back, thinking it was another vampire. I was surprised when I saw it was a blonde wolf. I'd never seen a wolf like this before, but Allie wasn't with Sol anymore. As the vampire got closer to Emmett, the wolf bit his arm and pulled him away from our friend lying on the ground, spent and bleeding. The wolf growled and dug its paws into the living room floor as it struggled against the vampire's continued punches with his other hand. I jumped in to help, biting the vampire's leg as I did with the other and pulling him from his feet to fall on his back hard. I tore the leg in my mouth from his body as the blonde wolf was finally able to rip the arm in its maw from his shoulder. We tore him apart together, ending with the other wolf removing his head. I looked at the wolf quizzically, but it shifted back to reveal it was Allie. She dropped to her knees next to Emmett and grabbed a blanket from the now broken couch to press to his wound. He opened his eyes to look at her, and he visibly blushed as he realized she was naked, averting his eyes. "It's okay," she told him. "Thank you," he stuttered, still unable to look at her. She carefully pulled him over to Sol, and continued to tend to Emmett. If she could stem the bleeding, maybe we could save him. "Don't come back into the fight unless you have to," I told Allie. "Keep him alive." "I will," she promised in a determined tone. I hope she'd be able to keep it. Sulian looked like he was getting the better of his vampire now, so I went to help Julie. I'd looked towards the woman in the doorway multiple times since this started, and she just seemed to be watching in amusement. There was no sign she was going to join us, at least not yet. Broken furniture scattered all over the floor, so I shifted back to my human form. As the vampire tried to jump over Julie as the first one had done with me, I front-kicked him in the hip right as he left the ground. The kick launched him into the wall, leaving a ragged hole and sending him into the next room. Julie looked like she was going to drop at any moment, so I linked her, "Go to Sol and Allie. Help them get Emmett out. I've got this one, and Maddox will be here soon." I really hoped I was right. Maddox's absence was terrifying, but all I could feel through our bond was anxiety and rage. He was still alive and relatively uninjured. I couldn't think about that now, though. The vampire I'd kicked was getting up slowly on the other side of the wall in the kitchen. I may have broken his hip because he couldn't quite stand on both legs. He winced if he tried to put pressure on it. I heard a roar behind me, and I turned in just enough time to see the vampire Sulian was fighting break free from him to run at the others. "No!" I yelled, my legs coiling to try to jump forward and catch him, but it was too late. The vampire was using the girls to bait Sulian. Just as he reached Sol, the vampire turned sharply and plunged his hand into Sulian's chest, where it broke free on the other side through his back. Sulian's cry of agony was awful, but it died quickly. The vampire dropped him to the ground at his feet, lifeless. Sol was screaming, punching at the vampire who had just taken her brother. Her punches weren't even registering with the vampire, and he turned toward her, smiling. Allie was under Emmett and not able to shift, and Julie hadn't made it over to the girls before passing out face down on the floor. Until I saw her shifted back, I didn't realize how injured Julie was or how much she was bleeding. Blood was everywhere. All I saw now were the people who had given me nothing but friendship, laying dead, beaten, and broken in front of me. I wasn't willing to let them all die. Not one more. "Hey!" I yelled at the vampire facing Sol. "Wait your turn," he said dismissively. "No," I growled. I picked up one of our fire pokers from the ground where it lay in all of the mess the room had become and charged over to the vampire with it. He grabbed Sol and opened his mouth to bite her. It felt like time was moving slower, and I could see every minute detail of what was happening. I could see the venom dripping from his fangs as they were about to pierce Sol's neck. I could see Sol's tear-filled eyes looking down at her brother as she accepted her fate and dropped her arms by her sides to quit fighting. Then, I saw the poker pierce the vampire's skull, splitting the back of it open and driving it away from Sol's neck. It plunged through the vampire's mouth and deep into the wall as the vampire reached behind his head, trying to grab the poker. I shifted, closing my teeth around his neck and ending his life. Shifting back, I looked towards the female in the doorway. "What do you want?" "You," she said with a laugh, and then before my heart could even beat once more, she was in front of me, her hand closing on my throat. I couldn't breathe, and it felt like she was going to crush my throat. I was holding on to her wrist with both hands, trying desperately to breathe and pull her hand away. She was stronger than the vampire that tried to kill me in my cell, and I couldn't break her grasp. I heard her taunting Maddox, "You're just in time to watch. We can't let her use us to kill him," Holland chided, angrily ready to fight. She was right. I had to break free from this and help Maddox fight. I told myself I wouldn't be a victim after I was kidnapped, and I needed to keep that promise. I wasn't as strong as her, but as I knew from training with Maddox and some of the other warriors after the kidnapping, that isn't all that mattered. I needed to use leverage. She was holding me by the throat, and I was sure she could hold me up in the air with one arm too. I jumped into the air, my head skimming the ceiling, and turned myself perpendicular to the woman. As I thought, it made it harder to hold me up, and I plummeted to the ground. With my right hand on her wrist, I reached out and grabbed the back of her head, pulling her to me. I threw my knee across her body, my shin resting across her waist. As my shoulders hit the ground, my leg crossed over her face. I extended my hips, and I felt her arm snap under my hips. She tried to crush me, her mouth opening to bite the leg that was now over her neck. It was compressing me into a ball with her arm in my grasp, where I wrapped my body around it. Anything near a vampire's face was dangerous, but we'd trained for this. As she pushed into me, I extended my hips and then rolled over my shoulder to force us to both be face down. I shifted my leg from over her face to behind her head, hooking my foot behind it and narrowly missing her teeth. I now had her face down with control of her head. I forced my hips into the ground and felt her arm snapping in more places. With it shattered, I pulled her arm towards my face as hard as I could until I felt it rip free. She screamed, trying to get away, but I pushed myself up and was now kneeling on the back of her head. It was all I could do to keep her pinned without biting me, but Maddox appeared next to me. The look on his face and the feeling from our bond was nothing but relief and admiration, and it eased the anxiety and terror I'd felt since this started. "You ready?" he asked. I just nodded as I shifted my weight from her neck to the back of her head and gave him better access to the former. I saw the claws extend from his fingers. He ended our fight. I collapsed on the floor next to the disgustingly beautiful vampire body. Maddox hovered over me. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I breathed out. I looked around at the devastation that was our home. Sol cried over Sulian, Ali held Emmett, and Julie still lay on the floor unconscious. "I'm sorry I didn't get to you faster," he grimaced, looking around. I shook my head. "We need to make sure everyone is okay and help my dad. Those won't be the only ones. We have to help the pack," I said, getting to my feet shakily. Maddox grabbed my waist, steadying me. I looked up into his eyes as he leaned his forehead against mine. "I'm so glad she didn't hurt you," he whispered. I reached up and grabbed his face. "Other pack members will need our help," I whispered. He nodded. "Let's get Emmett and Julie upstairs. We can burn the vampires later," he whispered. "What do we do with Sulian?" I linked. "Cover him for now. Let's get Sol away from his body," Maddox said. I nodded. Maddox leaned in and gave me a chaste kiss. "If we go fight, you can't leave my side." I have to know you are safe with me. Let's help our pack, I told him. Together. Chapter 65. Damien, thank you for taking the time to come here, Alpha Michael, I said as Liam, Michael, and I headed out to the training grounds. I appreciate your help with this. When Felix and I contacted him, Michael agreed to come before it was time to attack Warwick to see if he could teach me anything useful before the fight. Liam agreed that this was a viable strategy, especially if a weapon-fighting expert like Alpha Michael was on board. While we were on the phone, Quinn was excitedly in the background, begging Michael to go. No worries, he said, waving his hand to dismiss the notion that this had been any trouble. I'm happy to help. This is my life, and I love getting to teach new students. Plus, Quinn wanted to visit again anyway. She's taken quite a liking to Blood Eclipse and your Luna. Azalea tends to have that effect on people, Liam laughed. All right, so show much what you've got, Michael told me, intently waiting to see what I'd come up with. Okay, so these aren't exactly professionally forged, because I had the idea too late with us going to battle soon. Still, I think they'll work for this fight, and I can refine them later, I told him as I pulled my bag onto one of the tables near the training field. I laid the two cloth-covered weapons out and gently unwrapped my hard work. Michael smiled as he saw them, and he looked at me as he reached towards one of them. May I? Of course, I answered, wanting him to tell me what he thought. In his hand, he held one of the two axes I'd managed to have built for me. What's it made of? He asked, turning it over in his hands and taking practice swings with it. I got large carbon steel rods, and I had a machine shop alter the shape to be oval like an axe handle after talking to Felix a little about using one. Then, I had them use more carbon steel to create a blade for me and weld it onto the handle. The last piece is the part that really mattered though. It's hard to break a vampire's skin, and I thought that repeated use would dull them quickly. We've used stakes and other things to stab them, but that's just a one-time thing. I talked to our vampire expert and asked him if he thought using vampire fangs would work. He said that vampires have taken the fangs of their enemies to create weapons out of before throughout history, so it should work. Michael brought the edge of the blade closer to his face to inspect it. He gently touched the blade, and a thin line of blood welled before spilling over the blade and sending a lone drop down the flat of it. I guess I should have asked you if there's still venom in this, but I assume not. No, I assured him. We went back to the site of the battle where we got Luna and Missy back, and we got an enormous amount of fangs there. We dried them, washed out any remaining venom, and then they were shaped and put together to create one smooth end cap that was attached with an adhesive to create that edge. Theo said it should stay sharp until well after I'm too old to use these anymore. Michael picked up the second axe and swung them together through a sequence of strikes. When he seemed satisfied, his hand moved in a blur that was too fast for my eyes to follow, and he sent one of my axes flying towards a tree where it blew through the trunk and sank into a tree behind the first. The handle was shaking so hard that we could hear the vibrations from where we were. These are incredible given your lack of experience with forging weapons or using them. Would you allow me to make one small modification? He asked. Absolutely. I answered, hungry for anything that could better my plan. You don't even want to know what it is? He questioned, raising one eyebrow. His face had an amused expression on it. I have no reason not to trust you if Liam and Felix do, I told him, shaking my head no. Noted, he replied simply. Alpha Michael walked over to retrieve the axe he'd thrown and placed it next to its twin. Once they were reunited, Michael retrieved the curiously large bag that he'd brought out to the training area with him. He placed it on the table and unzipped it, rummaging through the contents as he looked for something. "There you are," he exclaimed, fishing out a simple-looking wooden box. The top of it was engraved with a moon and stars. He opened it to reveal 2 white rolls of fabric. I couldn't tell what they were, but they shimmered as if they were made of moonlight. I breathlessly watched as he carefully wrapped every inch of both axe handles, also covering where the weld for the blade met the handle. He continued wrapping from the top back down to the bottom of the axe. He tucked the end into the beginning of the wrap and then laid the axes in front of him. He went back to the box, pulled out a small vial, uncorked it, and poured half of its contents onto each wrap. It sent a bright moving rainbow shimmer outwards from where the liquid touched, imbuing it with a soft inner glow that died down into the moonlit appearance it started with. Going back to his bag, he pulled out a dagger with a similar wrap on the hilt, except it held a sparkling blue hue. Holding his hand out over the axes, he started chanting slowly under his breath and then brought the blade over his hand. It parted his skin easily. Blood welled to the surface, and he closed his hand to turn it over and allow it to drip onto the glimmering wrapped handles. To my surprise, they seemed to absorb his blood. Finally, the fabric settled into an ethereal silver that glimmered with a faint glow. "What did you just do?" I asked, not understanding a bit of what I'd just watched. I had never seen anything like it. He held up a finger to pause me and picked up one of the axes. He repeated his throw from earlier, and this time it blew through multiple trees before finally stopping in one almost 100 yards away. It wasn't moving at all, no vibrations visible or audible from where we stood. "I improved your weapons with a ceremony specific to my pack. You saw the vibration earlier. I know you were trying to make it as unbreakable as possible with human tools, but there are limits without magic. While we do fight with our wolves, my heritage is rooted in this type of fighting, and we have learned ways to improve our weapons against our enemies. These are a blessing from the moon goddess, and your axe is now virtually indestructible. You won't feel any vibration in the handle from striking with it, the balance is perfect, and it also protects the weld between the hilt and the handle from breaking. The strength of the protection is directly proportional to the wolf performing it, so yours is as strong as my pack can provide since I as the alpha performed the blessing." I don't know what to say. I told him, completely baffled by his generosity. "You don't have to say anything. I can't imagine what you're going through with your wolf, and your pack has shown us nothing but kindness." I wanted to return the favor. I picked up the axes still on the table and marveled at how much more comfortable in my hand it felt, how much easier it swung. Michael turned them into entirely different weapons. "Whether you want it or not, Michael, thank you," Liam insisted, grabbing Michael's hand to shake it and pulling him in for a one-armed hug. "On behalf of the pack and myself as Alpha, thank you. You and your Luna can consider yourselves part of our family." Michael nodded, "And you'll always be welcome in ours." "Just a question," I said, breaking the silence. I pointed to the dagger lying on the table now. "Why are they different colors?" "Oh," he said, looking at me like the answer was obvious. "It's because I have Quinn bless mine. I take her into every fight with me. After Alpha Michael blessed my axes, we went to work training to use them." He pulled out rubber axes that were similar in size to my own. "These are training weapons," he explained. "Obviously, we heal faster than humans, but there's no need for you to go hacking up the wolves in your pack while training. These will give you a good tool to use to become familiar with the techniques I'm going to show you. You can train them on a partner without hurting anyone." From there, he put me through the ringer. I thought I was beginning to be back in shape, but I doubted I would have handled this training at my strongest. There were so many different ways to use a couple of sticks. We trained on normal grip, short grip, parrying, striking, throwing, and so much more. I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose with the amount of information given in just a day. I couldn't remember a time in my beta training I ever felt so overwhelmed. As our training session was coming to a close, I knew that what I'd taken away would be invaluable. Liam looked happy. He'd done most of the training along with me, offering to be my partner through it all. He didn't have to be here, so I appreciated my best friend's support probably more than I did the alpha's. Like I tell everyone when learning martial arts with or without weapons, these are perishable skills. You don't know what you don't know, and we've only scratched the surface. Know that you aren't an expert and that if you don't continue learning and training in a dedicated manner, you will not retain what you've learned today, Michael told me seriously as we sat down for the first time. I wasn't a stranger to this fact. Warriors trained daily to stay in top fighting condition to protect our pack. Understood, I told him. I will continue to practice what you have taught me. Of course, you and Quinn are always welcome in Blood Eclipse, but I imagine I may be able to visit in the future to further my training as well. I am sure we can arrange something, he told me, clapping his hand on my shoulder. Luna Quinn packed Michael a lunch, and apparently, she'd meant it for all three of us. The size of his bag made much more sense as he began pulling out wrapped food and containers. We ate while making small talk about our kids and wives, although it was hard to talk when the food was so incredible. Quinn made us chicken sub sandwiches with thick cuts of maple bacon, a homemade ranch sauce, cuts of real cheese, shredded rotisserie chicken, and leafy green vegetables. She'd also included some seasoned cracker chips with an onion dip and a special tea that Alpha Michael poured us from a gallon-sized double-walled cooler. For dessert, she'd packed delicious chocolate peanut butter brownies that rivaled some of the things Azalea made. Where'd she even get this? Liam asked as he ate. Quinn and Michael had arrived after breakfast, and we immediately separated for training. Oh, she made it yesterday before we left since she'd knew we'd be doing this all day, Michael told us through a mouthful of sandwich. I didn't really like tea, but I thought I'd try it anyway to avoid being rude. As it passed my lips, I felt something bloom from within my stomach and spread throughout the rest of my body. The soreness and fatigue I felt from training all day dissipated. I felt like I'd just woken up this morning, refreshed for the day. What is this? I exclaimed, looking at my cup like it was full of magic. Liam had yet to drink his. Oh, sorry, he apologized. I forgot you don't know. I should have told you first. Quinn makes a tea that refreshes your body after training. It won't physically heal you like I hear Luna Azalea can do, but it will wipe the slate clean in the context of fatigue. It's handy for our warriors and other things, he finished with a cheeky smile. It is not something we readily offer up among other packs. Don't worry about it. We are not entitled to your traditions, Liam replied. He took a sip of his drink, and a look of surprise fell over his face as it began to work. Wow, he whispered. Michael let out a boisterous laugh, throwing back his own drink. I looked down at my watch, the kids should all be out of school by now. Your mom was getting Delilah and Lucas with the boys, right? Yeah, Liam replied. She told me to come get them when we were done later. Liam sat up straighter suddenly, and I could tell from his eyes that something was wrong. Someone was linking him with a problem. Immediately, my body came to attention, readying for action. We need all the warriors now, he said quickly, jumping to his feet. There are vampires in the pack territory. 2 just broke through my mother's fence. Chapter 66. Liam, vampires are here. Why are they here? We were days away from our assault on them. My family was in danger, my pack was in danger. I could feel Gavin bristle in outrage. Damien stood with me as I began to dish out orders. Austin, I linked first. Vampires in the territory. I don't know how many. Take a patrol to my mom immediately. There are 2 there now, and she's trying to protect the kids. Get my children to safety. We need all the warriors in motion now. I want as many as possible here at the pack house. I need patrols out getting pack members to safety. My family will be their targets, but they will come after anyone. I'm on my way, Alpha. I'll do everything I can. No one is near Missy's house, though. Once I get the kids, I will get to her. They must have used our thinned patrols to their advantage, Austin's voice answered. It's fine. Just get there. Azalea, I reached out next. I needed her to get to safety so I could focus on stopping this attack. Vampires are attacking our pack. Please stay with Felix. I sent Austin to get my mom and the kids. Maddox is with Missy, but I'll get to her, too. Okay, I'll call Axel so he can make sure everyone in town is protected and get here to help, she answered quickly. My anxiety eased with her lack of argument. I love you, little Luna. And I love you, my Alpha. Come back to me. I knew Felix would get Azalea to safety and keep her that way. I turned to Michael and Damien, both looking at me with tense expressions. Lily, Damien worried, looking towards the pack house where Lily and Quinn were supposed to be waiting for Azalea. She's with my Luna, Michael pointed out. Quinn can keep them safe, but I will make sure. He sounded less worried than either Damien or me. Lily isn't helpless, Damien shot back. I could hear the protective note in his voice, and I think Michael took the hint. I'm not saying she is, Damien. I'm simply pointing out that I'm here to teach you how to fight, and Quinn is my best student. Let me go to them, I will protect our mates. Help your Alpha because he needs his beta, Michael urged. I do need you, I told him seriously, hoping he would understand. I never went into a fight without him by my side. Fine, he conceded. Maddox's voice came through my head, interrupting my train of thought. What is it, Alpha? Damien asked me. Vampires are attacking Missy and Maddox's house. Austin said there is no one close. We need to help them, now, I demanded. Damien nodded and grabbed his new weapons. Go, Michael, I told my fellow Alpha. Please make sure Lily is safe along with your Luna. I can only assume this is an all-out assault, and they will be here soon. I'll make sure they're taken care of, Michael said, more to Damien than me. He shifted on the run, moving toward the pack house. Even with the war on my doorstep, I couldn't help but notice his coat. It was silver with an iridescent sparkle throughout it. The color of the weapon wrap made sense now. What are they? I wondered as I turned to move. Damien was right on my heel. I needed to get to my pup as fast as I could, I would not let Warwick take her again. Not so fast, a voice came from the opposite corner of the training field, directly in our path. What now? I roared. The stench of vampire hit me, and my anger boiled over at the audacity they had to not only attack my family but to come to me directly. Across from us stood an unimpressive creature with silvery white hair. His appearance matched his pompous expression. You won't be running off to help any of your puppies because I'm here for you, Alpha Liam. His smug confidence was infuriating. I didn't have time for this. I had to get to Missy, I needed to ensure my pups were safe. Austin was right, we had so many warriors completing preparations to leave that he caught us with our pants down. We had to limit patrols of the pack land to allow enough manpower for the preparations. We had no intel that there was any vampire movement, so they caught us completely by surprise, which worried me for the pacts between Warwick and us. This obstacle needed to be discarded quickly so I could make sure Warwick was not here personally. "I don't care who you're here for," I called out to the vampire. "You're in my way." "I'll be brief," the vampire retorted, staring intently at me. "I just came to kill you, and I don't think it will take long." "You and what army?" I growled. "Oh, forgive my manners." "This one," he said, giving a signal with his hand. Vampires appeared all over, and it looked like there were at least 20 or more in addition to himself. They fanned out into a semicircle, completely blocking our path to Missy. "Come fight me yourself, coward!" I shouted. I needed to take out the strongest vampire. I thought goading him into fighting me alone might work. "I think not," he replied with a wistful smile. "While Big Rave wasn't as strong as I am, he was still a sire. One of your mutts killed him, and we know he isn't an alpha. That could be troublesome for me, and I'm not willing to risk the lives of my entire kinship. I will not be foolish enough to take any chances in killing you today. These may be young vampires, but I am betting you won't be able to overcome the odds." Maddox reached out to me once more, his voice more confident than panicked now. "Maddox just told me they're having trouble fighting us in our human forms. They probably trained to fight us as wolves after the last battle," I linked Damien. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, and I knew it was because this leveled the playing field for him. "Thank you, Maddox." "Is she safe?" I asked, pleading with the moon goddess to watch over my children. "She will be." While his answer told me Missy wasn't out of danger yet, his tone inspired confidence. All I could do was thank the moon goddess for pairing my pup with a strong mate intent on protecting her as I would. Everything happened so fast after he got back with Langston, and we hadn't had a real chance to talk. I hadn't expected him to go to school the very next day after their return, and he was not in a place to talk about the resulting altercation the next day. With the war preparations pulling my attention in different directions, I hoped letting him take Missy on a date would give them some sense of reconnection before anything else could happen. Still, Maddox was built for this, and he'd become a man that I could be proud of since arriving in my territory. Knowing that Missy was in good hands, I had one last thing to do before I could fully focus on the threat in front of me. I'd never tried it before, but with war upon our doorstep, it was time. "Pack members, this is Alpha Liam," I linked, projecting my voice to all of them at once. It felt strange. The rush of responses back to me let me know I'd been successful. There were so many that I couldn't make out anything, and it became a wall of noise. "Quiet. Listen. Vampires are here on our pack land. If you aren't a warrior, get to the pack house. If you are, rally outside the pack house and protect it. Your Delta and Gamma will direct your teams. These vampires are here to kill us all, but we will not let them. Fight as long as you can unshifted, they have trained to fight you as wolves. Go now. Protect your home." "I didn't know you could do that," Damien said, looking at me with a weird expression. "Neither did I." "Are you two done with whatever it is you're doing?" the sire asked lazily. "Have you said your goodbyes? You ready die?" I asked him, extending my fist out to him. He met it with his own. "I'll follow you into battle any day, Liam." I could hear him tighten the grip on his weapons as we mentally counted to 3. I took off in a sprint toward the sire. I knew I wouldn't make it to him without being intercepted, but I had to try. If I could kill him, it could kill all of the vampires here. I'd make them regret giving me that chance. Maddox already ended on Sire on his mission, there couldn't be many more in league with Warwick. It was only advantageous for us to take out another. The Sire's minions closed the circle around Damien and me, attacking us from all sides and diverting my attention momentarily from the Sire. If I left Damien by himself, the odds would be worse, so I had to help cut down the lesser leeches. Even for an alpha and beta, 20 vampires versus 2 was still an enormous obstacle to overcome. I guess we'll have to do this the hard way and kill them before the Sire, I called out to Damien, whose back was turned to mine. My name is Nethercoat. You don't have to keep calling me the Sire. It sounds ominous. Nethercoat's voice rose above the growls and snarls as we fought. Your name won't matter soon, I told him, confused at the exchange as his riotous laughter filled the training area with its menacing sound. If he didn't want to sound ominous, he was failing. I grabbed one of the vampires by the face, palming it and picking him up into the air. His arms flailed, and below my wrist, his mouth opened and closed with his teeth gnashing as he tried to bite me. I flexed my hand, crushing his skull within it before throwing his body into another vampire attacking me behind him. I could hear limbs hitting the ground behind me as Damien hacked them off. The axes were working for him, and I was glad. Not only did it give him a sense of purpose again, but my beta was again a violent force of nature that I could count on to help defend our pack. We were making progress fighting the vampire horde, but it was taking too long. I needed to get to Nethercoat. I wondered if I could bait him into this fight with his kin. I grabbed another vampire by the face after punching her hard enough to daze her. I lashed out with my other hand, raining down blows on the vampires trying to close in as I grabbed her. It gave me enough room to throw her at Nethercoat. He swatted her away with a lazy backhand, but he looked displeased with my new tactic. Do you really wish to fight me that badly, Alpha of Blood Eclipse? He drawled. Yes, I growled. Let's tear him apart, Gavin raged. I have to be careful, but I promise I'll let you come out to fight when it's time, I reassured him. Don't wait too long, he snarled. The vampires around us stopped fighting and retreated back into their semicircle without a word. Damien stepped back to my side, his axes dripping blood. He was breathing heavily, but he looked otherwise unscathed. I'll ask you to have your beta step aside as I have with my kin, Nethercoat demanded. Fine, I agreed. I've got this, Damien. I will intervene if this doesn't go your way, he insisted quietly. I nodded and turned to Nethercoat. I leveled my gaze on him. He walked towards me and stopped a few feet away. He gently untied the cloak he wore and pulled it from his shoulders, tossing it to a vampire waiting on the side. I assume you are ready to begin, he asked flatly. I lunged towards him, feinting a strike to his jaw with my left. As he moved his hand to block it, I ducked down and punched as hard as I could towards the outside of his knee, intent on buckling it and taking out one of his limbs. The soft thud ended in a sound like broken glass as that joint was utterly destroyed under my fist, but then I felt it. I think that was an acceptable sacrifice, Nethercoat goaded. What are you talking about? I asked, stumbling back from him. My head was swimming while my back stung like it was being burnt. The feeling was familiar, but I couldn't pinpoint where I'd felt it before. Nethercoat held up an empty syringe with a pained grin on his face as he shifted his weight all to 1 foot, wolfsbane, of course. The pain radiating from my back made sense now, he'd injected me when I ducked under his hands. Chapter 67. Lily. I was enjoying my day keeping Luna Quinn company. We'd mostly talked through the morning, stopping by the kitchen to make lunch before we headed out to the park. We settled near the shore of the pond to relax and bask in the quiet break from kids and responsibility. Lissa was picking the kids up from school today, and Damien was out training with Liam and Michael. He said to expect him gone all day, so we had plenty of time to ourselves. We settled onto a blanket, and I read a manuscript that Quinn had given me to look over. She brought it for Azalea but didn't mind me reading it as we ate our lunch. I still couldn't believe Quinn wrote about our world and published it as fiction for humans. She explained that this one was about how she and Michael found each other. As I read, she looked around dreamily, taking notes in the notebook she carried everywhere and talking to herself. "I just love your pack lands and the pack house here," she told me, smiling as I looked up. "It would make such a lovely setting for a book." I laughed. "You don't even know the half of it. Azalea and Liam could be their own book series, let alone the other members in the pack. I bet you could do a series just on the women, too." She pondered, chewing the end of her pencil. "A series? Care to elaborate?" I spent the next few hours retelling the events of the past decade to Quinn, her asking questions as we went along. She took notes the whole time, and I started to wonder if she was seriously considering writing this. It would probably be best to make sure Azalea was okay with this. I trusted Quinn to get permission first. I did leave out quite a few private things, so Quinn would have to ask her anyway. I looked at my watch and realized Lissa had been watching all of the kids for a while now. I wondered if I should get them. She'd just lost her mate, and I felt mildly terrible about having her watch them so I could play host. "Would you be upset if we grabbed mine and Azalea's kids? They're with Liam's mom, and she just lost her mate." "I'm sure she doesn't mind, but I feel bad about asking her to watch Delilah and Lucas along with her 3 grandkids," I asked Quinn, hoping she'd understand. "Of course. I have plenty of pups of my own, and I don't mind them around at all. Let's get this stuff packed up, and we'll go," she replied, already putting her notebook in her bag and moving to stand. "Thank you," I sighed in relief. With all of the violence to come, I just wanted to hug my babies. Quinn dropped her bag, her mouth agape as she stared into the distance with glassy eyes. "Are you okay?" I asked in confusion. There was nothing but the training field in that direction. She snapped herself out of it, and I realized she'd been talking to her mate. "Michael is on his way here, but the vampires are attacking. Liam's daughter is being attacked, and apparently, his mom too. The kids are there," I yelled, launching myself to my feet. "He sent patrols. Based on what Michael said, they should be close," she told me, but I didn't have time to think. I didn't care who was on the way to help. Vampires were near my children, and I needed to be there. The serene, calming day we'd been enjoying was over. We were under attack. That's when I heard Liam's voice. "Liam just linked us all at once," I said, astonished. "I didn't even know he could do that. He said they think that the vampires are having trouble fighting us in human form and to try to fight unshifted as much as possible." Quinn nodded. "That makes sense. Most packs only train to fight as wolves." "Luna, I have to go. You can go back to the pack house or wait for Michael here, but Lissa will need help getting all the kids to the pack house. I am not going to wait for someone to protect my pups." "The pack house?" I needed to link Lacey. "Lacey, vampires are attacking. Get everyone in the safe room." Quinn smiled softly. "I'm not letting you go alone." She looked weirdly calm, but then again, she wasn't exactly normal. I hesitated for a moment after turning toward Lissa's house. I couldn't decide if I should run in human form or shift. If they surprised us, I didn't want to be in wolf form after Liam's advice, but it would be much slower to run in human form. Eventually, the faster method won out in my mind, but I didn't get the chance to act. We smelled their stench, our noses burning uncomfortably. I looked up, and multiple vampires were coming towards us from both sides of the shore. I could see more of them across the water on the other side of the bank, too. There were too many of them for us to handle ourselves. My stomach plummeted, and a chill ran down my spine. I prayed to the goddess that the patrol would get to the kids in time because I wasn't sure I would make it there myself. "You said Alpha Michael is on his way here?" I asked her, looking at the leeches approaching us much faster now that they'd zeroed in on us. "Yes," she said simply. "I guess we need to try to hold out until then," I sighed, gritting my teeth and preparing myself. I'd trained with Damien on occasion before we had Delilah and Lucas, but clearly not enough for this. I wasn't going to attack Warwick, and we weren't expecting them to attack here. I was confident I could hold my own in a typical fight, but this was more. We were far outnumbered and fighting an enemy that didn't play by our rules. I have too many books in this bag, so I left my sai in Michael's bag, Quinn fussed, rummaging through her bag as the vampires drew closer. "You just casually carry around sai?" I asked in confusion. She shrugged. "We're here to teach Damien how to use weapons. It's what our pack does." Grabbing a book in each hand, she let the bag drop to her feet. Shaking my head, I turned my focus to the vampires about to reach us. I wondered if we killed the ones on this side fast enough, if we'd have enough time to break through to get to the kids, but then I realized I'd be bringing more vampires to the kids behind us. Plus, from what we knew, they're either as fast or almost as fast as we are. I stepped 1 foot back and got into a fighting stance, my hands coming up to my face and my body belaying to my incoming opponent. I took a deep breath, trying to remember anything I ever learned. A vampire reached for me, his arms outstretched and his mouth wide open as he snarled, trying to get to my neck. I lashed out toward his nose with my left hand and then his jaw with my right. Both resulted in satisfyingly solid hits and blood flowing from his nose. For a moment, I was confident that I might be able to do this. That's when I realized he was walking through my punches because they didn't faze him even though I drew blood. I panicked, and I shifted while jumping backward away from him. I growled, a warning to stay back, but he didn't care. He charged in, losing a hand in the process as he tried to strike my face. I spit his hand and blood onto the ground, but he'd already gotten too close. His arms wrapped around me, and then I felt another set of hands doing the same. I could hear Quinn fighting behind me, but there were too many vampires to hope for help. It hurt to breathe as the two vampires squeezed me together, one around my neck and the other around my ribs. I could feel my ribs starting to crack as I growled and snarled, trying desperately to bite the one around my neck and get a hold of him. No matter what I bit or ripped off of him, he stayed firm in his resolve to crush the life out of me. As my vision began to fade to black, I felt the pressure release from around me, and I was able to take a deep breath for the first time in several minutes. The air burned my lungs, but I gulped in the air greedily, staving off the darkness I'd almost fallen into. The spotting around my vision subsided, and I watched as Quinn used her blood-soaked book to hit a vampire in the throat, throwing it aside as it crumpled into a wet, useless mess. She looked down at it sadly, like she regretted hurting it, and then she kicked the vampire in the knee, dropping it to the ground. Quinn put her hands on its shoulders and shifted. Her hands were replaced by paws, and she looked down at the vampire in her much larger form before tearing his head from his body and throwing it to the side. Amidst the violence and bloodshed, I couldn't help but notice. She was blue. Her fur was the same color as her hair, and it shimmered in the sunlight as she moved. I didn't think her hair was naturally blue, and I wasn't sure how this was possible. Not important right now, I thought, turning towards the vampires who just kept multiplying from around the bank as they were killed. I could feel my ribs begin to heal slowly. Then, I heard a roar from behind the vampires and then saw a flash of silver jump over them. The strange wolf landed next to Quinn, nuzzling her with his forehead. It was Michael. He shifted back, patting her gently on the back as he stood next to her, and then they jumped into the fray together without another word. I stood, my breath coming easier now, and followed them. I was determined to do my part to save our pack from these monsters. Lacey, fight as long as you can unshifted, they have trained to fight you as wolves. Go now. Protect your home. Liam linked. I stopped, surprised by his words. Lacey, vampires are attacking. Get everyone in the safe room. Lily Link came suddenly. I sat in the kitchen, snacking and chatting with Miss Marcy while Felix was busy with Azalea. We were supposed to be going to the doctor late this afternoon. I dropped my fork as soon as I heard Liam's voice, and Lily's pushed me into motion. Lacey. Miss Marcy said, concern lacing her voice. Vampires, I said. Vampires are here. We need to get everyone to safety. I exclaimed, jumping up from my stool. I wobbled for a minute, my roundness causing balance issues. Miss Marcy's terror mirrored my own for a moment before she squared her shoulders. All right, you go to the 3rd floor and get the safe room open, tell everyone up there. I'll start getting everyone down here, she instructed. I nodded, my hand going protectively to my bump. I didn't waste any more time, we both moved, starting to collect everyone in the pack house. It suddenly occurred to me that none of the kids were here, and I hadn't seen Lissa with Isley all day. Felix, I instinctively linked him. I know, he said. Get to safety, help get as many pack members as you can into the safe room. Junior, Leo, Delilah, Lucas and Isley, where are they? I asked him. With Lissa. Austin went to get them, Felix informed me. I rushed up the stairs as fast as I could with my large belly. Our pup was due in only a couple of weeks, and my walk was beginning to resemble a waddle. A ripping pain shot through my lower abdomen. I stopped, clutching my stomach. What happened? Felix linked me worriedly. Nothing, I told him. I could get up to the safe room so he could focus on keeping Azalea safe. The vampires would target her more than likely. I'm okay. I panted slightly as I stood straight again. Other wolves were rushing up the stairs. I could hear shouting downstairs, warriors must be arriving to help get pack members to safety and keep the vampires at bay. I am coming for you, Felix said. I squeezed my eyes shut as I started up the stairs again. Keep Luna safe, I told him. I'll be fine. My pace was slower now with the residual pain in my sides. I got to the next flight of stairs before it happened again. I stifled my groan, trying to breathe through the pain. My wolf was telling me to calm down, my body was reacting to the stress. A hand came to my back, and I turned my head to see Abigail, Austin's mate, behind me. We need to get upstairs, she said softly. I nodded my head. With a little encouragement, we began to move. Her little ones were clinging to her arm as we got upstairs. We rushed down the hall to the safe room, 2 younger warriors stood in the entrance, waving us inside. Abigail immediately found a chair and sat me down. Another pain ripped through my stomach, this one worse than the first 2. Lacey, what's wrong? She asked. I don't know, I breathed through the pain. It hurts right below my stomach. It feels like something is ripping apart inside of me. My eyes were screwed shut as I tried to wait out the pain. I sat there rocking back and forth slowly, desperately wishing I had Felix with me. I knew he needed to get Azalea to safety and protect her, but I needed him right now. Oh no, Miss Marcy's voice said from nearby. What if she is going into labor? Abigail whispered. My eyes shot open at that. No, I said quickly. It's too soon. No, no, no. We may not have a choice, Miss Marcy tried to say calmly. No, I told them, shaking my head sharply. I still have weeks. Felix isn't here. There are vampires outside. This pup is not coming right now. I could feel my heartbeat speeding up. Lacey, please relax, Abigail said. If you don't, this pup is sure to come right now. I stood up, feeling panicky. As I did, I felt another pain, this time over my entire stomach. Lacey, Felix's voice came into my head as I let out a little whimper. Then it felt like my bladder lost all control. Liquid gushed down my legs. Lacey, we have no choice, Abigail said. You are having this baby now. Felix. The rest of the audiobooks will be uploaded in the next episode. Join us on Patreon to listen to more unlimited audiobooks.